Whether it's for your soul, infinite knowledge, or a really nice golden fiddle, be careful of the deals that you strike with the devil. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Geek Pantheon. I am Eric, and today we are returning to the series of points of inspiration that we started a while back with the Archfey. You all really liked it. You wanted to see more, and so we're going to do devils this time. And unlike the Archfey video, I don't have a singular point of inspiration. This is really just based upon more of the general pop culture portrayal of the devil and how it relates to the D&D interpretation of the devil and how you can do some interesting things with that. Important disclaimer, I guess, there are, religions that have an actual figure called the devil. Not talking about that dude. Talking about fantasy creatures that are devils in D&D. But I might make allusions to various works that do portray the Christian version of the devil as a point of inspiration. But once again, not talking about that person, just talking about, make-believe games where we roll dice. So I hope that disclaimer is good enough for you to disassociate your personal stuff, if you have any, with this video. If not, then I guess click off the video if you don't want to do that. So anyway, moving on. Let's talk about some different points of pop culture inspiration that we can look to, and then talk about how devils are portrayed in D&D and the interesting things that we can do. So first off, my biggest point of inspiration when it comes to the devil is from classic literature. Dante's Inferno and Paradise Lost are the two big ones, college reading stuff. And, you look at how hell is structured in Dante's Inferno, and the different levels, and it's all very neatly categorized and things like that, and you know exactly where every damned soul goes. And then you look at something like Paradise Lost, which in my opinion, and my college civilization lit professor disagreed with me on this, I think is a very compelling and sympathetic portrayal of the devil in that book. But I went to a Baptist school, so that may have something to do with the disagreement. Anyway, it's a very interesting and compelling look at how the devil became the devil. And I think there are some interesting things that you could bring into your D&D game from both of those pieces of classic literature, whether it is when you talk about the party going to the underworld or going to hell, obviously looking to Dante's Inferno for points of inspiration in how it's structured and how you travel and traverse through a place where souls go can be very compelling and interesting. And furthermore, adding layers to any NPC or any antagonist is going to be more interesting. And so you look at someone like Lucifer portrayed in Paradise Lost, and you think about, what's the motivation there? Why are they the way they are? And with a fantastical entity like devils in D&D, much like when I talked about the Archfey, I tend to play them as being very bound to their nature. And for devils, their nature is lawfulness. All of them say lawful evil. I don't really like the good evil axis of alignment. I think it's lazy. I think it's much more compelling to just go lawfulness to chaotic and then ramp up the intensity of those two pillars to kind of define the morality of it. But we'll get into that in a second. So I think, looking at a devil and its lawfulness and the devil's making these very harsh calls and stuff like that can be much more compelling if you flesh these characters out. And while, yes, they are bound to their nature, that nature speaks to their justification and their interpretation of events around them. So while there might be rioting in the city because the king has, unfairly raised taxes for the 20th time and the people can't afford to feed themselves. And, they're fighting for their lives and their ability to be able to put food on the table for their families. From the devil's perspective, from their interpretation, it's going to simply be a matter of the people rebelling against the king, who is doing what the king needs to do to make the kingdom function in the way that they see fit. And so how dare these people put the entire kingdom at jeopardy just because they're not willing to make personal sacrifices for the sake of the larger kingdom. That would be how they would twist it because of their inherent nature of lawfulness. So that's what I'm talking about when I talk about making their perspective interesting. Not necessarily sympathetic, not something that's going to turn the party, but it's more than just blah, ha, 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 ha. Yes, the king needs more gold, so we must take more gold. No, it's like actual, like, you know, running a kingdom costs money, y'all, and we need to have the coffers full to, you know, be able to go to war or build roads. And then the party can point out the king has like 15 gold statues of himself. The king makes better decisions when he's happy. So yes, the king has to indulge every now and then in order to be happy so that he can best serve the kingdom. Okay, that sounds dumb. So then you can continue with your adventure, but you still have that interesting exchange. Anyway, so that classic literature is a good source point when it comes to the devil. Faust is also a great story when it comes to looking at the devil and the devil making deals and stuff like that. I'm not going to touch too heavily on the deal making aspect of the devil, even though that's a big thing with like Faust and the devil's trip to Atlanta. And but I covered that a lot in the Archfey video. So just go back to the Archfey video because all of the deal making stuff with the Archfey is applicable there as well, I would say. Of, you know, they're lawful, so they're going to stick to their word. They're going to write contracts, yada, yada, yada. So that's some overlap between devils and Archfey. Going into the lawfulness of the devil, though, I think that there are some interesting things you can do where if you put devils in different positions in the world, that you can do some really compelling and interesting things with the nature of their lawfulness. Quick caveat. Obviously, in D&D 5th edition, I don't think any devils have shape-changing abilities. They look like monsters that have like pincers or spikes or a crazy beard of tentacles, stuff like that. So obviously they're not going to be like, you know, the Viscount of a city of humans because they're very clearly a devil. So with some devils, adding on the shape changer trait to their monster card to allow them to, you know, be in the thick of things, manipulating stuff, pulling the strings. That's also what I think of when I think of like devils is, you know, they are manipulators. They manipulate the law to benefit them and their own interests. So that is one thing. Devil monster cards aren't going to have that. You'll need to add it if you want to incorporate devils into your game world in some of the ways that I'm going to be discussing. But also, you could just visit a devil town. You could also just visit a devil town, or have your setting be one where devils do rule some sections and people are cool with that. You know, do with it what you will. But before we get into that, if you are enjoying the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up down below and subscribe to the channel. It helps out a whole heck of a lot. We've gotten a bunch of new subscribers lately. Welcome to all of you that are checking out the channel. Hope you enjoy it. Hope you stick around. And if you haven't subscribed yet, then do it. It's cool. It's free. It is free. And if you want to support the channel, you can head on over to our Patreon, patreon.com/thegeekpantheon. If you want to allow us to continue doing stuff like this and upgrading. We got a whole new lighting rig. I don't know if you could tell that the lights are different. I sure hope you can. But, you know, the lights are on the ceiling now instead of on the floor where they were. And that's thanks to all of you watching the videos, first and foremost, subscribing to the channel, but also supporting the channel through Patreon. So thank you for this. It was a lot of work, but I'm glad I did it. So cool. So I'm going to get into a few different functions that devils can serve in the, I don't want to say mundane world because we're dealing with fantasy worlds all around, but, you know, not on the plane of devils like fighting in the blood war and all that kind of, like, I'm going like, you know, your average adventuring party going throughout the world. So the first one that I think could be compelling to have a devil in this role is an executioner. You know, this is where we talk about the dial of lawfulness, that, you know, a person that is lawful but reasonable. If they were an executioner, you know, they have somebody that's coming up to the block and they have a group of people, your adventuring party, running through the crowd screaming, "Stop the execution, stop the execution. We have proof of their innocence. We have a letter from, Zubeldorf, who confessed to the crimes, and Germer didn't do it." And the executioner's like, "I'm sorry, but the judge said Germer did it, and they need to be executed." Like, just read the letter. And a lawful, reasonable person will read the letter and then, maybe call for the judge, or, just delay until the next day when, people can deliberate and look at the evidence and reassess. And that is a compelling way to play an executioner. Not a devil executioner, though. They're going to stick to the letter of the law, baby. They're going to look at that letter and go, "Cool, chop," because the law says that the judge passed judgment on the person, ordered them to be executed. The execution is set to happen now, so the execution is happening now. Sorry. And that is how you ramp up lawfulness to be something that is not morally good, potentially, depending on the situation, without saying that it's evil. Because when you say someone is evil, then it's like the executioner is like maniacally laughing and like, "Yes, blood." No, that's not interesting. What's interesting is an executioner that's like, "I'm sorry, like, I get it. I think he's innocent too. That's not my call to make. Judge said he has to die, so he has to die." It's like Tommy Lee Jones in The Fugitive. He was a devil. when Harrison Ford says, "I didn't kill my wife," and he's like, "I don't care," and then Harrison Ford jumps off a dam. He was damned. He was damned. Another role that we can put devils into is moving them up the old administrative chain in, the city, and making them like an administrator or a bureaucrat, and having them stick to the letter of the law and enforce the law in interesting and compelling ways. And just having them stymie the party or stymie the antagonist. The party can't ally themselves with devils, even if the party knows that they're a devil. Let's say the party has figured it out, and they know that the bandit camp is planning on later on tonight. They know that the city gates are under guarded during the hours between 3 and 5 a.m. Let's say, like, that's when we'll strike. And the party goes to the devil bureaucrat and is like, "Hey, we know that the bandits are going to be attacking. We need to do something." It's like, according to the ledger, it says that only X amount of guards are to be deployed during those hours. So, it's not my call to change the ledger. It's what it says. So I'm sticking to it. And then, depending on whether or not, where you want the agency to be, you could either have the party figure out, if it's a party that's inclined to do this, they could figure out that there's a rarely used bylaw of the city that's like, if X amount of citizens of the city petition the mayor that they think that there's a threat coming that night, then they have to triple the guard duty for the entire night at the gates. And so they find that law and they go back to the bureaucrat, like, "Ha ha." And the bureaucrat's like, "Okay, go get those citizens. Y'all don't live here. It says 6 citizens. No, there's 0 citizens here right now." And then it becomes a different quest of convincing citizens to come with them to petition. Or if you want to have a benevolent devil, are those 2 words I'm allowed to put together? I'm gonna. Benevolent devil. Then you could have them say, barring bylaw 7 subsection A point Z, there's nothing I can do. It's like, well, what does that mean? It's like, that's not my business to tell you, but they put them on the right track. And so then the party can go do that. And then, it's just all about sticking to the law. And that's all that matters. And then obviously you could have the devilish leader of a city, the devilish mayor or governor or king or emperor or whatever, that, is the not only expected to uphold the laws, but can also create the laws. And that's where you can get to a much more kind of maniacal, like truly oppressive style of villain or antagonist that, they don't have to stick to the law. They can create new laws to justify what they are doing. And so at that point, when you have a devil in that kind of position, you need to give them, the why. Like, why are they so oppressive and tyrannical to their people, and run with that as the motivation. Is there an external threat that they can see coming? Like, they know that the demons are going to attack soon, or something along those lines. And so they have to continuously raise taxes and institute curfews and keep insurrection down as much as possible, because they have to keep the ship running tight, because there's an invasion coming and nobody will believe them if they try to tell them. So they just have to bear this burden alone and, continue to oppress people. They still suck, but that's an interesting story to tell. And then the last example of a devil that I think is interesting is the devil, like, general / warrior. Like, you could even have him be like a bounty hunter, like not within an infrastructure, and give them an honor code. They're not lawful to a set of laws, but rather a set of principles. And so if the party runs into conflict with that, then they're going to be attacked and hunted by this devil. But at the same time, if the party can use that to their advantage and kind of leverage, the beliefs of this devil and what they hold dear and what they stick to, then that can be very compelling and very interesting. Because devils are immortal in, the canon, because they are planar creatures that, once they die, they just regenerate on their plane and they continue to live. But, you could play them as being on the material plane and really liking it. They left the blood war or whatever conflict is going on back in their home plane, and they dig it here. They don't want to leave. They don't want to die. And you can inject some humanity into that lawful nature. Like I was talking about before with like how they interpret, the rioting because of the tax hikes. You could also make them very compelling from like a personal standpoint of, let's say, hypothetically, they were attacked a while back where somebody threw acid on them. And so part of their like personal belief and code that they stick to is that anytime somebody spills a liquid on them, because, they can't risk it, they can't chance it, then they require blood for that affront. Just weird stuff like that. But they're lawfully adherent to this personal code. And then you could also make it much more broader, general things like they refuse to leave witnesses. They cannot leave witnesses behind after a job, or they don't attack people on Sundays, or things like you could, you just set up these tenets much like you would a paladin, and you have them stick to that without fail. And I think that could be a really interesting way to play a devil as well. And then going to player options, if you have a player who has the fiendish pack as a warlock, then I think the expectation would extend that, a devil would expect their followers and their minions to also be lawful, to also fall into that nature, into line. And so as a player with the fiend pack, you could really play with that and run with that of like, okay, I am extremely lawful because where my power comes from, it imbues me with that nature. And it can be really interesting if you have a character that was chaotic or neutral, and they decide to multi-class into Warlock and they take the Fiend pack. That could be a really interesting struggle within them of like, oh, like I really don't want to jaywalk anymore. Hey, no, the crosswalk's right down there. It's like 20 feet away. Let's do it the right way. And that can be an interesting struggle internally with a player taking on this lawful nature and having it be kind of this alien force that resides within them until, it grows so powerful that they become a lawful character. That can be very, very interesting. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Comment down below your thoughts on it. Are there any other creature types that you would like me to see do in a similar vein? Let me know. Thank you all so much for watching. I've been Eric, and I will see you next time.